What language do we hear Trump using? Vermin, thugs, threats, sinister, dangerous, grave. I would not be the first to draw comparisons between Trump and the dictators of time past, dictators of rhetoric scarily similar to what I just quoted.
I move that this House fears the return of Trump's America. And to open the case, I look to Isabelle Horrocks-Taylor, elected member of Standing Committee.
Thank you, Madam President, for your introduction and for giving me this wonderful opportunity to speak tonight. To begin, I ask, ladies and gentlemen, who is Donald Trump to you? What is the first thing you think of when I mention that name? Perhaps it is the multiples of firsts that he has achieved. The first president in almost 200 years not to attend the inauguration of a successor. The first president to be suspended from Twitter. The first president to be impeached twice. Or perhaps, when I say Donald, it is a white cartoon duck that springs to mind in a blue sailor's cap, resembling somewhat less of a caricature than the eponymous man himself. All these images that we widely accept, that we laugh at, that we are so immediate to reach for in place of the deeper and darker underbelly of what it is that Donald Trump represents. There are two things that I'm going to discuss this evening in my speech. Firstly, basis. Why should we fear the return of Trump? What does he stand for and why is it so bad? And secondly, legitimacy. Why should the fear of Trump's return be both very real and very rational? However, before I proceed any further, it falls to me to introduce our opposition speakers tonight. Speaking first, we have Mr. Oliver Jones-Lyons, Christchurch, with a head of hair almost as orange as Donald Trump's spray tan. JL, as he is known to us, is far from a stranger to the political scene. In fact, his LinkedIn tells us that he serves on the executive of the Liberal Democrats. Indeed, liberal democracy is a political stance that I'm sure will be about as useful to the opposition side of this motion than Anthony Scaramucci was to the White House during his blink and you'll miss it 11-day tenure. I also admit that it is a relief to see JL sitting opposite me in the appropriate attire for this evening, for he has been known on other occasions to brighten up this hall, sporting his signature Hawaiian shirts, perhaps the loosest taking of the definition of black tie optional I have ever seen to date. And in keeping with his more relaxed style, let's hope for the sake of our members here tonight that JL spends as much time writing speeches as he does chilling out on Leo Buckley's boat. Speaking secondly for the opposition is Mr. Sebastian Gorka, who formerly served as one of the deputy assistants to the president during the Trump administration. Indeed, there was some confusion about Mr. Gorka's departure from the White House back in August of 2017. Mr. Gorka claimed at the time that he resigned from the position. The White House subsequently claimed that this was not the case. I wonder if Mr. Gorka expects the House to have any confidence in his views on Trump's America when the former president himself appears to have had very little confidence in him as well. However, lest we fear Trump's good judgment may be of little worth, as we probably ought on this side of the House, I instead remind the audience that Mr. Gorka is also permanently banned from YouTube for his repeated violation of the company's policy on spreading misinformation. I suppose we can only hope he will refrain from employing such habits when he speaks later on this evening. Nevertheless, all jokes aside, it is our pleasure to host Mr. Gorka in our chamber tonight, and I look forward to hearing his takes on this motion. Speaking finally for the opposition is Mr. Charlie Chadwick, St. Anne's College. Now, this is not the first Charlie that I've introduced in this chamber, for that would have to be the esteemed ex-president of New College, who also sat across from me, albeit with a slightly less terrified expression and slightly fewer number of failed elections going for him. For those of you who may be unaware, this time last year, Charlie ran for ALCA president, only to lose to Oxford's very own Donald Trump, the ordinary member from Christchurch, famed for his own impeachment from office last Trinity. You may draw the similarities yourselves, ladies and gentlemen, albeit for that same member to do it for you, who even came dressed as Trump for Port and Policy this Halloween. Just to be clear, this is who Charlie lost to, although I suppose that there are less flattering roles to be cast in than Hillary Clinton while debating in favor of the return of Donald Trump. Madam President, these are your speakers, and they are most welcome. So now, for my first point, basis. Why should we fear the return of Trump? I looked to Twitter as a good place to start. Trump is a man that has hardly become more moderate with time, which will become clearer as I read to you some of his tweets in chronological fashion. In 2019, he called out 4 congresswomen of color to go home, despite all being US citizens and despite only one of them not being born in America. I read you the tweet. So interesting to see progressive Democrat congresswomen who originally came from countries whose governments are a complete and total catastrophe, the worst, most corrupt and inept anywhere in the world, now loudly and viciously telling the people of the United States, the greatest and most powerful nation on earth, how our government ought to be run. Deeply rooted in Trump's political identity is therefore a clear sense of prejudice. How, ladies and gentlemen, can we not fear for America in the hands of Trump, a man so ignorant and so arrogant he does not consider women or people of color to be his equals or fellow citizens, an opinion that is not just simply not befitting of a national leader, and indeed a leader of one of the most wonderfully diverse nations on our planet. It is therefore completely at the expense of other people that Trump governed the United States, caring so little for the welfare of others and so much for his egomaniacal desire to be the most heavy-handed boxer in the ring, that he tended to handle his international relationships with nothing resembling caution or care. I read you another tweet. The North Korean leader just stated that the nuclear button is on his desk at all times. Will someone from his depleted and food-starved regime please inform him that I too have a nuclear button, but it is a much bigger and more powerful one than his, and my button works. You ask me if we should be afraid, ladies and gentlemen, of the return of Trump's America. I ask you if we have any other choice when faced with a man who can consider nuclear war codes as an appropriate tool for playground politics. I ask you if we have any other choice than when faced with a man who sanctioned military police in Lafayette Square to use tear gas and stun grenades on protesters demanding justice for George Floyd just so that he might have a good enough angle for a photo op. But it took more than that, didn't it, for Donald Trump to finally be impeached for the inciting of violence and removed from Twitter for the same offense. In January of 2021, a mob of Trump's supporters stormed the Capitol, but stopped neither at trespassing nor at destroying property, but delivered fatal injuries onto one of the Capitol police officers. Wounded by the failed election and ridiculed by his incessant attempts to overturn the outcome via means of malpractice never before dreamt of by this hallowed union, Trump's response was hardly of condemnation. He wrote, "These are the things and events that happened when a sacred landslide election victory is so unceremoniously and viciously stripped away from great patriots who have been badly and unfairly treated for so long. Go home with love and in peace." The true fear, ladies and gentlemen, is that there are many who read Trump's words, victory, love, and peace, and they believe them. Now, for my second point, legitimacy. Is this threat legitimate? Will Trump return? Just last Saturday, Trump affirmed his vision for the future of America, taking not the opportunity to speak of unity on the Remembrance Weekend, but to speak of division. He said, "We will root out the communists, Marxists, fascists, and the radical left thugs that live like vermin within the confines of our country." We are living, ladies and gentlemen, in a time of political and military turmoil. Wars are raging in Gaza and Ukraine, and the global superpowers, Russia and China, are both squaring up to the US, looking for a reason to challenge. Where was Trump's recognition of this dire international instability? He said, the threat from outside forces is far less sinister, dangerous, and grave than the threat from within. What language do we hear Trump using? Vermin, thugs, threats, sinister, dangerous, grave. I would not be the first to draw comparisons between Trump and the dictators of time past, dictators of rhetoric scarily similar to what I just quoted. To employ such anti-democratic sentiments at an occasion marking the sacrifice of American veterans made against the very tyrannical ideas Trump now appears to favor bodes for an exceptionally fearful future indeed. And it does not stop here. Trump routinely dehumanizes his political opponents. He routinely discredits the system of American society that upholds its very structure, and he routinely targets its most vulnerable members. There continues to be much basis for fear, ladies and gentlemen, and let me tell you why it is also legitimate. While some might dismiss the threat of Trump, since there is recent precedent for Democrats being re-elected for their second term in the face of necessary political opposition, Trump is just a different breed. Dole and Romney at least respected the Constitution, at least understood the self-restraint vital to the functioning of the nation. Trump sees nothing but Republican red, and according to recent polls, it would appear that even if only marginally, the majority of America would also see red if the election were to happen tomorrow. So to conclude, ladies and gentlemen, we have now reached a position where the fear of Trump's return has both basis, legitimacy, reason, and reality. Trump's America is one that perpetuates both domestic and international violence, one that perpetuates harm and hideousness against the people who identify as part of any categories alien to those that he himself belongs. Trump's America is a mirage of freedom, a nursery of misinformation, and an illusion of greatness. Its return is not just something to be feared, but it's something we must desperately hope to avoid. I urge you to vote for the side proposition this evening. Thank you.